What up, what up, what up? It's your girl Tania, aka the Cool Auntie, and this is the Cool Auntie podcast, y'all. Y'all, I'm tired. I'm not gonna lie. I have to catch a flight in literally 3 hours. I've been ripping and running all week, trying to get so much done before I left, and I am exhausted. Literally exhausted, but I had to stop in here. I had to talk to y'all. Especially after the week that I had, and so this week, I do have a 9 to 5. And so, I was doing interviews, and I was asking this question, and halfway through the interviews, I'm like, why do you ask this question? This is such a complex question. But I was asking people, who are you? Who are you? And so I guess, and as I was asking it, I was asking myself, okay, Tania, who are you? So I guess now my question to you and kind of kick off today is, who are you? If somebody were to walk up to you and ask you, who are you? What would you say? I think it's a hard but a necessary question, I think in a way it can be kind of a scary question too, because I think sometimes even myself, you get intimidated and you get scared when you don't have the answer. And I think, again, this idea of the re-up, and I loved chatting with my bro last week, Andre, about passion and purpose. And I wish we had so much more time to really unpack that. And so stay tuned. I'm going to circle back around to passion and purpose before we end this series, but just knowing that we're all in this re-up, right? This idea of we're all resetting, reestablishing, everything in our life, right? The pandemic really put things into perspective, or even change our perspective, right? And so now we're all just searching, right? We're all in this exploration phase, and but more than anything, I think everyone is really in this space of searching for purpose, right? Answering that other really weighty but important question, right? This idea of, what problem am I designed to solve, right? And I'll even give you a minute to think about that one, because you haven't heard that one in a few weeks. For those of you who are just now tuning in, that's a question that we asked back in season 1. Just this idea of, because I think people fail to realize that purpose, that's what purpose is, right? Purpose is the use of a thing, right? And so in that the use of you, right? How are you the answer to a problem in this world? I think again, we're all in the space of rushing to and ready to be used and wanting to be used. But I would encourage us to almost take a step back, which is why I kind of don't want to jump into passion and purpose too deep too soon, because I would say that just like any other tool or thing, a tool isn't helpful and you can't use it if you don't know what it is, right? A hammer is great, but if you don't know it's a hammer, and if you don't know it's supposed to be used to bang on something, to put it into the wall, you ain't gonna know what to do with that hammer. And you might end up hurting yourself or somebody else, right? And so just like with regular tools, the same goes with purpose. When you aren't intentional about it, but more importantly, we don't really know what a thing is, it's hard to know its purpose. And so the same thing for you and I, we're all jumping to understand our purpose, but a lot of times we struggle with finding purpose and discovering purpose because we don't know who we are yet, right? We can't answer that question, who are you? And so today, before we jump into the passion and purpose and what problem we're designed to solve, and really going into what re-up is, I want to stop and just think about, who are you? And I gotta always bring it back to the big man. But I heard in a sermon once that, and it's actually, I don't know if you all know, but God literally created everything with words, except for man. If you go back to Genesis in the beginning of the Bible, and so he said this in a sermon, I'm like, and I went back and I read it, and he was right. God created everything with just speaking it. Let there be, let there be, let there be, except for when he got to man. When he got to Adam, God used his hands for the first time, at least to our knowledge. You know, and I want to give that a moment to sink in, because I think it's something we tend to overlook a lot. And so, of course, I'm asking, like, you know, why? And then there's scripture in Jeremiah where God says, like, you know, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. It's like this interpersonal connection. That's why I always say that relationship with God is so personal. And it is because he has a personal connection to each of us. A lot of times, if you read in the Bible, God is referred to as a potter. And so, like, another fun fact, if you look at pottery, I know like nowadays we live in a very modern time where things are mass produced in factories with machines. But back in the day, vases and like and pots and pans and all those things were created by potters. And one thing about a potter is that they can't make the same pot twice. Right? Every potter, like, because it's gonna be a different, if you've ever like gone to like a craft place where like you got to actually, like, you know, make a ceramic pot or jar, you'll know that, like, because it's so unique in how you move your hands and how you touch the clay. It's just so unique. And so back in the day, every pot and pan, no matter if the potter wanted to or not, he couldn't make the duplicate of the same thing. I think almost the same about God. God didn't just put words to us because he took his time with each of us. It's like, nah, baby, you custom. You custom. This ain't no, like, you ain't no shoe off the wall type joint. Like, you custom. Like, you had to go to Nike ID. Remember back in the day, I don't know if they still do. The kids still do that. They go to Nike ID. I got this new little ring and I like a lot. But I remember back in the day when I was in college, I used to go to Nike ID and like custom my shoes. I wanted to have a pair of shoes that nobody else had, right? And so just like that, like who you are, your identity is custom, my love. That God took his time, and when he took his time, I think it's, and we go back to like what it means to be raggedy. Raggedy doesn't mean that we think that, like, I don't actually think that I'm raggedy. Like, I have a very high self-esteem, I would say, right? But raggedy is just this idea of when God says, I knew you, I know you. Like, I knew you before you were you. You know what I'm saying? And that he also knew what we would mess up on. He knew that I would have an attitude. He knew that I would have a smart mouth, and I just literally had the inability to keep my mouth closed. He knew that. And so many a times we're walking around where we're mad at ourselves and we're trying to fix things that he already factored in when he gave you purpose, when he customized you, and it's intentional. You're in your family for a reason. You're in your profession for a reason. You're the color that you are. You're the height that you are. Everything that about you that makes you, your identity is designed custom, but it's also designed intentionally. And that what you are and or what you are not does not affect your purpose. You know, identity itself is simply made up of characteristics, right? The things that make you unique, your attitudes, so how you think, behaviors, how you act, and like just like your overall qualities, like what attributes do you have high levels in, right? And so like those things make up identity. And so when I talk about understanding yourself, right, and answering that question of who are you and thinking about you being custom, I don't want you to think about just the identity part, because that's true. All still the same, but like that identity you can just fill out in a wheel. You can answer in like a bubble questionnaire. I want to talk about, and when we ask the question of who are you, we're talking about self-identity or self-perception. If you remember back in Broken Crayons, Still Color, we talked about the power of perspective and perception and how they control how you show up, you know? And so perspective and perception, those don't just apply to other people and to situations and to things. They also apply to you as well. A famous philosopher, Carl Rogers, he came up with the model behind self-identity or like self-perception. which is essentially like how you interpret and how you perceive you. And so, like, again, I don't want to dive into it too much today, because it's so complex, and it's so many layers and levels to it. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to even conceptualize, right? And so, this idea of self-identity, so like you as yourself and how you perceive yourself, is essentially made up of 4 different categories. Okay, and I don't want to spend too much time on them, because I can probably tell you a million things and you're going to forget half of them, right? And so essentially it's four categories. The first one is self-concept. And self-concept refers to how you see you, right? How you see you. And when I say see has a deeper meaning. I don't mean how you physically see you as far as like sight. But when I say see, it means how do you view you? Like, what is your view of you, and what value? So the 2 V's, V times V, right? Or V squared, right? For me, when you say how do you see you? How do you view you? How do you value you? Right? How much worth do you put on you? How do you perceive who you are? That's self-concept, right? And so like that's only a fourth of identity, right? People tend to think like, identity is just that one section. No, that's only a fourth, right? The first one is just self-concept. Number 2 is self-knowledge, or some might call it like a self-awareness, which is, what do you know about you? This one is not as nuanced as self-concept, because like self-concept is like, you have to really dig a little bit deeper to really understand how you view and how you value yourself, right? But self-knowledge is just fact. It's like, what do you know about you? How aware are you? How well do you know you? Like, for example, I know that I don't like people before 9 a.m. Like, I'm not going to pretend, or like I told my students once, because we were in an interview and someone asked me like, what kind of supervisor are you? I said, well, first and foremost, I would like to tell you that I'm not nice. And they laughed because they thought I was joking. But I was like, no, I'm serious. I'm not nice. When I hear the term nice, I think of polite, tactful. Usually they're not as honest. Because when you're trying to be polite, you're not being honest. You're usually fluffing it all up. Like for me, like nice just seems like just enough. And I'm not nice. Like there are times where I believe in genuity, and that genuity goes both ways. It can be nice. It can be like, sweet genuity, or it can be like, just like, I don't like that genuity. Right. And so like, I always say like, I'm not nice. I love to have fun. I'm very jokey. I'm a smiley person. I'm friendly, but I am not nice. Right. Because I'm aware. I don't want you to assume that I'm nice, and then I say something to you in a moment and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that wasn't nice, because I'm not nice. And I know that, right? And so self-awareness and our self-knowledge is just what you know about you. I think it's also, again, clear, just like we're in both of those, and even, I guess, even all 4. I don't believe that you'll ever fully understand and know you completely. That's what friends are for, and what mentors are for, and colleagues are for. Because we all have blind spots. We all have areas and things about us that are sometimes so close we can't see them, right? Or because they don't directly affect us, we can't see them. So don't feel pressure if like you're asking yourself that question and you're like, I don't really know everything. I don't think you're supposed to know. I think that's what life's about. Life is about this journey of self-discovery, of stepping into a new version of you as you move along, But just, again, realizing that these are only 2 sections of now four parts of what identity is, right? So you have self-concept, you have self-knowledge. The third one is very familiar. That's your self-esteem, right? So self-concept is how you view you, right? How do you see you? How do you value you? How do you see you, right? Self-knowledge, self-awareness, like, what do you know about you? Self-esteem, on the other hand, is how do you feel about you? That means knowing what you know, right? So if self-concept is how you see you, and self-knowledge is what you know about you. Self-esteem is, okay, how do you feel about what you see, and how do you feel about what you know? So not being nice. There was a time where it bothered me that I wasn't nice, where I wanted to be nicer. And I would be mad at myself for not being nice. You know, I was like, why do you have, like, I was in a line in a grocery store, and the cashier had a boogie in her nose, like a booger in her nose. And I'm saying that because I'm looking at this darn nose ring that keeps bothering me. But, she had a boogie in her nose, and I immediately got upset because I'm like, yo, she's probably been, I asked her, I was like, how long have you been working? She said, I've been like here since this morning. I was like, you know what? And I got mad. I said, I'm mad. She said, why are you mad? I said, can I be honest with you? And she was like, yes. I said, well, you have a boogie in your nose. I said, but I'm mad because I'm thinking about all the people who have been in your line who didn't tell you had a boogie. Like, and then I'm thinking in my head, like, you know what, Tania, because they're nice people. They don't walk up to people who they don't know and strangers and say they got a boogie in your nose. You know, but I'm like, and so there's a time where I'm like, Tania, why can you not keep your mouth shut? Why can't you just, like, do you have to be so honest and upfront all the time? Like, shut up. That was maybe a few years ago. I think who I am now is like, I'm not nice. I am the person that if I walk through your line and you have a boogie in your nose, I'm going to tell you not to be mean, but I'm going to tell you so that you don't spend the next 2 hours of your shift with a darn boogie up your nose because nobody told you. Like, dang, like if I had a boogie, I got mad and shook the table. If I had a boogie, I want somebody to tell me, like, come on, dog, you know? And so my self-esteem is like, how do I feel? How do you feel about what you know? I think, you know, many times we hear high self-esteem and low self-esteem. I think it's something to clarify is that you can have esteem in different areas, right? You can have a high self-esteem when it comes to your self-awareness, but maybe have a low self-esteem when it comes to your self-concept. You know, and so being mindful of not placing like too high or too low of extremes. Like as far as the gamut, like the gamut is so large, it's so gray, it's so nuancey. Like I don't believe that no one's has high self-esteem in every area of their life. We all have insecurities. We all have things that we're self-conscious about and all of that, you know? But again, going back to this idea of identity is made up of so many different pieces, right? So not only do you have, like, so that's only 3, by the way, right? You got self-concept, you have self-knowledge / self-awareness. I'll say self-awareness because that was more familiar, right? So self-concept, self-awareness, right? Self-esteem. And the last one is your social self. And that's really about how you show up, right? How others see you, right? So there's how you see you, but then also there's a part of you that is controlled by how others see you, you know? So for example, a person who hears that they're pretty all the time may feel like they're pretty because they hear it all the time. Whereas someone who doesn't hear it all the time may not perceive themselves as pretty. Mind you, they can both be attractive. Or women, right? I'm gonna say women because I use the word pretty, but it's a non-gender, non-binary word, whatever. Happy Pride Month. But just this idea that 2 people can be equally attractive, but just because of how someone refers to them, or just whether or not they're being called pretty, can determine whether or not they perceive themselves as pretty. And so social self also makes up a component of your identity because you do care. People who say I don't care, people think about me, they're lying. Even I will say that, like, do I care less each day? Yes. The closer I get to 30, the less fucks I give. And the more I get to know me, the more I become my own best friend, the less F's I give to F's. We're working on this cussing thing. I've been getting a little raggedy and carried away. I'm bringing it back. Right? But everyone to a degree and to an extent does in fact care about how others perceive them and or how they show up to others, right? And so mind you, like I want you to think about just even like those four categories, right? And not to give you dramatic pauses, but I like to always give you all space to really kind of think and munch on some of that, right? And that's essentially 4 different pieces of you. Actually, not even 4. It's actually 12. I'm going to tell you why. Because in each of those areas, so mind you, there's 4 different chunks that make up your identity, right? But when I say you, I'm not just referring to the present you. I'm also referring to a past you. I'm referring to the present you, the past you, and the future you, right? Because like, again, like self-concept, how you view you. There's a way that you view your past self. There's a way that you view your present self. And there's a way that you view your future self. And they can be positive or negative, but you have a different perception, right? And a different view on your past, your present, and your future self. So every time I said you this past 10 minutes, I was actually referring to your present, past, and future self. So self-esteem, how do you feel about your past self? So how do you feel about things that you've done and who you used to be? There are times where even myself, I have felt guilty for who I used to be, right? Right? There's the present me. Like sometimes because of my attachment to my future me, I don't always give my present me the flowers, right? So my self-esteem can vary when I talk about my self-esteem of myself, right? And so in reality, I want you to think in regards to like your identity, it's essentially a puzzle of 12 pieces. It's the past, present, and future you in those 4 different categories. Right? That you are yourself, your sense of self, and the answer to the question, who am I, is essentially 12 pieces in a puzzle. And I think like for some people, it's probably new. Mind you, we hear all those words, but many a times like they're not actually really defined for us. And so if this is overwhelming, it's a lot to process. I know I probably would encourage you to go back and play this over again, or just check in on social media as we break it into pieces. But like it's very robust. It's a big thing. And it's a lot to chomp. But I think if you change your narrative, it could be a good thing to look at, like a good thing. Because I think it also gives you space to give yourself more grace. Because you got to think, there's no official curriculum for this, right? We done spend all of our life in school and they don't actually talk to you about, and we're not, and mind you, me being an educator, even in college, like my job, what I do for students is I help them think about who they are. Right. And I help them answer these hard questions. But there's no class on this. Right. There's no class. So like literally we're all out here figuring it out. And that's what I mean when I say like, you know, giving people grace, because literally everybody's out here just trying to figure it out. We're all figuring out who we are. And again, like I mentioned before, like it's like with a tool, when you don't know how something works, sometimes you can misuse it. You know? And so many a times when we think about that question of who we are, right? And when we think about our identity, we base it off of 3 things. I call them the 3 E's. Number 1, our experiences, right? What happens to us and what we encounter in this everyday called life, it does shape who we are, right? That's how like sometimes people can see themselves as failures if they're constantly failing. Right? Sometimes we associate the act of failing with being a failure. Mind you, like I told y'all before in Broken Crayons, there's no such thing as failure when you're learning, right? But for some people, like your experiences have shaped how you see yourself, right? Number 2, education. You know, I don't believe, even though I teach on a college campus and I have degrees, I don't believe that college is for everyone, right? But we are all educated to a certain, whether it's book smarts or street smarts. We all have a certain level of education. And so the more you know, or the more you know about some of these things. So for example, like for those who've never really understood the difference between self-concept and self-esteem, who knows what they think about themselves, right? Versus somebody who does know the difference, right? So what you've been exposed to, number 3, is also important, right? So your experiences, your education, and your exposure. So what were you exposed to? Did you get to travel? Like, so I know some people who have lived in the same place their whole life. So all they know of themselves is who they are in that city, right? Versus somebody who's traveled the world and they've seen themselves in different settings and different sceneries. So they have a different idea of who they are, right? And so because we were never sat down, because no one actually really took the time to help mold us in our thinking in regards to who we are, we let the 3 E's tell us who we are. You know? And so I think, and I go back to the very first question that I asked you. And I want to ask it again. Who are you? You're probably like, fuck, Tania, I don't know. After all that, I don't know, right? and again, it goes back to that idea of it's a really hard question. I think it's probably hard because it's how it's worded. It's so big. It's so complex, right? And so many of the times when people answer it, they say they tell people what they do. Right? When people ask you who you are, we say what we do, right? So who are you? Well, tell me about you. First thing we say is our profession, right? How we make our money, what we're known for, what we're good at, right? But I would challenge us to think, and again, not going too deep into this, but I would challenge us to think and really and just munch on the fact that no, who you are is really who you are. When someone's asking you, who are you? They don't want to know what you do. Because mind you, whatever you're doing is probably not even your purpose for real. Because if you don't know who you are, you're already not in your purpose. You know? And if you don't have the answer to your question, you should be setting up intentional points in your life where you discover it. You know? If I were to ask you right now, who knows you the best? Most people would say, my best friend, my bestie. My bestie knows me the best, right? Or they might say like their partner, like their lover, their partner, their husband, their wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, right? Who do you think should know you the best? It's my second question. And I would probably get the same responses. My bestie, right? My partner. But what if I told you like that's actually wrong? And I don't say wrong a lot because I feel like a lot of things are nuanced, a lot of things are gray, right? But that's wrong. Outside of God, who knew you before you knew you, you should know you the best. That's why I always say like this idea of I am my own best friend. It's BYOB, be your own bestie. Be your own bestie is because you should know you the best. When somebody asks you who knows you the best, it should be you. You should be your own best friend. I understand people who I think the pandemic and being forced to be home, many people had to really sit with the fact that they were alone and isolated this past year in an isolated season. And those suck. And mind you, even for people who weren't alone necessarily for the pandemic, I think that we all have moments in our lives where we're in isolation and in solitude, right? And in those moments, it absolutely sucks to feel like you have nobody. You know, and so this pandemic, when it first started, I ain't gonna lie, I've been very transparent about my little mental breakdown too of I hit a point where I thought I was by myself. And I'm like, no, like at the end of the day, first and foremost, you always have him. You have him even when you don't ask for him, he's present, right? But number two is that you will always have you. Which is why it's so important for you to be your own best friend. Because in those moments, you have to be the person who holds you accountable. You have to be the person who holds a mirror up to your face and reminds you who the fuck you are. You have to be the person who motivates you to get you out. You know what I'm saying? And get you going and get you moving. You're the person who has to celebrate your own success. That's you. You are your own best friend. And so in this season of resetting, before you start asking yourself, what should I be doing? First, ask yourself, who am I? Matter of fact, that's your homework for the week. Every day, I want you to look up in the mirror and I want you to say, who am I? And respond with at least one thing, because you're not just one thing, but just get into the habit of thinking about it consistently of who am I? Okay? And that's not to put any pressure on yourself. There's science to it. It's levels, there's layers, and there's even strategy, which is why my job exists and why I love what I do, because I get to help people discover who they are every single day, and it's great. And so I encourage you to stay tuned in this series, because I'm going to keep breaking this down piece by piece, but also I'm going to be bringing people in and talking about some of those really big things that we get to think about who we are in this big blob of a world, right? And so make sure you're staying tuned with the series. Make sure that you follow me on social media _ the Cool Auntie. Follow me and go ahead and shoot me a DM and talk to me. I want to hear from you. Uh-oh, somebody's at Auntie's house. And so make sure you follow me, shoot me a DM. I want to talk to you. I want to hear from you. And lastly, if y'all could do me one favor, I love y'all to death and I don't like to ask y'all for too much, but I do want to ask you all one thing. If you love the series, if you're rocking with the podcast, if you love what we post on socials, just share it with somebody. You don't got to share it to a bunch of people. You don't got to do a mass text, but just share it with one person. Just one. I want to continue to get this message out. I'm really, really enjoying myself. I'm enjoying hearing how it's impacting you. And I want it to continue to impact other people across this world, baby, because this journey is happening and we together. I got you and y'all got me, and I know it's going to be great. So please stay tuned and locked in with the series, man. But I can't wait. We resetting, okay, baby? It's the re-up. We lit. But one of your nieces and nephews at the door, and I gotta answer it. So, as always, I love you so much. Have a great rest of the week. Call me back. Switch.